and welcome back. The future looks bleak for many NGOs relying on donor funds from the US, such as Pepfar and USAID funding. Prof Salim Abdool Karim joins us. He's the director of Caprisa. Dr. Karim, Prof Karim, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. HIV/AIDS research is an incredibly important exercise, particularly HIV/AIDS prevention research, which in South Africa has made tremendous progress. What will the seizing of funding into such initiatives, research projects, and outreach projects mean for the sector?
Good evening, Oliver, and good evening to all of the viewers. If we look at the overall AIDS control program in South Africa, we have close on to 6 million patients on treatment. Fortunately, our government is the principal provider of that treatment. And in 27 districts, Pepfar plays a supportive role. And the funding that comes in from Pepfar is in the order of around $440 million. So that's a very large sum of money. And mostly its role is to play a supportive one. In other words, it provides staff where it's needed, or facilities, or any of those kinds of support activities. The loss of that, it will be significant. But it should not compromise any patient receiving care, because that care is available free of charge from any government facility. In terms of research, there is substantial research that's funded through USAID, particularly, some of it part of Pepfar and some of it outside of Pepfar. And it's quite a substantial loss that those funds are no longer going to be available if USAID is not resurrected in some shape or form.
I would imagine that there are many people who hear these headlines, hear the news, and think, oh no, my family or myself may not be able to access ARVs anymore. And your explanation earlier suggests that that's not the case, that ARVs will continue to be available, and that those who are on some HIV treatment and related treatments will continue to receive those. Am I understanding that correct?
You are correct, Oliver. So a few years ago, our government ensured that it took over responsibility for purchasing of antiretrovirals, for ensuring that the tests that are done in the laboratory are paid for by our government. So our government takes responsibility and pays for all of that. What Pepfar pays for is some of the services, so in other words, the pharmacists, the doctors, and so on, that are in addition to what the government has in place in those clinics. So it's a supplemental role. So that means that the services would be somewhat longer. You'll have to wait in longer queues. You may have to go to a different clinic, but the actual provision of care will still be available and available free in government services.
Yeah. Some of the research that South Africa has been participating in, Prof Karim, and also perhaps in certain instances leading, such as pre-exposure prophylaxis research many years ago, or such as the HIV vaccine and prevention shots research that was also led by South Africa, doesn't just benefit South Africa, it benefits the world. All data is good data, right? And South Africa isn't the only country in the world inflicted by HIV and AIDS. I would assume that a lot of the funding would be withdrawn from such research programs and related activities. The world suffers from that, not just South Africa. Should there be a need for a global collaboration in HIV/AIDS research funding?
Actually, supremely ironic, because when you look at any infectious disease, and we've seen that particularly with COVID-19, but it certainly is the case with HIV, that HIV has spread to every country in the world. No country in the world has been spared HIV. So that means that we are dealing with a disease that is a virus that is spreading and can spread, continue to spread across the world. It respects no borders. No, it doesn't matter what wall or how high a wall President Trump might want to build in its borders. HIV will test those borders and will cross those borders. So there's no question that in a disease like HIV, it goes across the world. And so when we do research, we do it in huge partnerships between US researchers, European, Australian, South American, Indian research, Chinese researchers. We're all part of a global community trying to find solutions. And those solutions are solutions that apply to every country. So if we find a new technology, for example, our own work on trying to find antiretroviral prophylaxis, today known as PrEP or pre-exposure prophylaxis, that research then becomes available in WHO guidelines and becomes available across the world. So it benefits everyone, including the US. So it's somewhat short-sighted and ironical that the US is closing down this research because it feels that its own national interests are not being addressed, when in fact any of the outcomes from this research also benefits Americans.
Yeah. Prof Karim, thank you so much for your time and your insights. Really do appreciate that. Prof Salim Abdool Karim is the director of Caprisa. Simon is standing by with your latest in sports.